the syllabus for the quiz is up to the last lecture and tutorial, the Friday tutorial, the solution of which you are going to receive on Friday. So by Friday morning 6 AM, you are supposed to submit all the tutorials. Those who will be submitting, they will be evaluated. Those who will be submitting late, they will be evaluated as 0. So after we share the solution, if you submit, it will not be considered as a submission. We will check it, but we will not evaluate, will not put any mark. So please be careful about that. Saturday, Sunday, we will have a few, you understand that there are 72 students and I have to conduct a series of, verbal quizzes. I cannot go for a kind of written quiz for all of you. So the method will be, there will be a fixture that will be suggested by the TAs to you. So we will take up 1 hour at a time. Maybe we will be starting on Saturday as early as 9 AM. And 9, 10, 11, 9 to 10, 1 hour, 10 to 11, another hour, 11 to 12, 12 to 1. So in 4 hours time, I will try to conduct, as many students as possible. Say suppose if I think about half of the students, which is 36, and evening, we can go for another 4 hours, okay, to make sure that another 36 students. So typically I am getting about 9 students an hour, okay, or maybe a little less. I'll go a little slow here because this is very important part of your transfer. So I request you to prepare very well for the quiz. I'm just telling you the method of quiz. What is that? It's very simple. It will be through all the lecture notes. So you have 8 lecture notes with you. You are going to prepare all 8 lecture notes, okay, barring the part that will be taught today and tomorrow. Okay, you have to prepare all the lecture notes. I will choose one slide for you. From all and this will be a random choice. I'll pick up one slide for you, and from that slide, I will request you to describe me certain things. And this will be a time-bound process. So you have to make sure that your preparations are, you have gone through the book, you have gone through the lecture notes in a very careful manner. You have understood what is there in the lecture note. So you basically will have to go through. There are about 80 to 100 slides that I have shared with all of you. You have to go through them in a very, very detailed manner. Say, suppose, let me just share with you my slide. So what do I expect? Say, suppose this is the slide. So suppose somebody gets this slide. Okay, so my slides are visible. Can somebody confirm?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes,
so
sir.
what I will ask you here, say suppose I will first flash the slide in front of you through my computer. Okay, or I will ask you to open the slide too if you are unable to really see through my computer. I will ask you to open the slides. So all of you should be ready with the slides in your computer or mobile phone. So you will be opening one slide, right? And say suppose the slide that I am going to tell you, you are going to open that slide. And then say suppose here I may ask, see what type of partial differential equation is this? Whether this is parabolic or elliptic. What is K? Okay, so suppose what is the unit of K? Okay, what is the unit of heat flux? So I'll be randomly asking the questions from all of you. Okay, like this. They say dt del of T by del X. So what is a gradient of temperature? Okay, what is a heat transfer coefficient, right? What do you mean by what is this A? You say in this geometry, what is this A? So I'm going to ask some of the questions like this, by flashing one of the slides, and then from there I will evaluate your performance. Okay, so it will be all random from my side. You will not have the choice of looking at the slide, but you have all the slides. You have to prepare. If you are thorough with all the slides, there should not be a problem. Yes. Yes, please.
Sir, could you please repeat because somebody removed me from the meeting?
Yes. Yeah. Can you please, things are cut. Can you please repeat?
Yes, sir. From that side, your induction after that, I am not able to pop up because somebody removed me.
See, you are repeating this complaint. I don't think somebody is removing you from your voice and all. I understand you have some issues with your internet. Okay, so we have system where I don't think it can be anybody can remove you. Your system is a little bit fragile, so you please make sure that you have a LAN connection in your home and sitting on the right place. Okay, sometimes it happens in MS Team. Yeah, what do you want me to repeat, please? Priyanshu?
From the opening of the slide, 2D conduction.
No. Why I was telling that, say suppose this is a 2D conduction, right? So I was telling that how the quiz will be conducted. So I will be opening one of the slides of the 80 slides that are shared with you. And I may ask you to present the entire slide, or I may ask you some questions from here, like what is conductivity, what is thermal conductivity, what is heat flow. Okay, what is Q, the unit of Q, what is the unit of A, what is the unit of delta T by del Y. Okay, so similar type of thing I'll be asking from the slide itself. So you have to get acquainted with all the slides that are available here. Right? So that is the overall target. The quizzes are meant for whether you are studying it properly or not. And I will be recording the entire quiz so that later on, you may complain that the things are not evaluated properly, so that we can look back. What is the situation? Do you have any question related to this?
No, sir.
Yeah, anybody has any question? Anybody has any question related to the quiz? Is it clear to all of you? So quizzes will be, each and everyone will be quizzed for about 5 to 10 minutes. And you know the weightage that I have already shared. And this will be based on the slides that I have provided with you, and I'll be asking questions around those slides. And it's a verbal quiz rather than writing. And this will be the process for next 2 quizzes also. So you have to submit the tutorials without you are supposed to submit the tutorials by solving yourself. A few of them have been solved by us, but you have to submit by yourself. And that is one point of evaluation. The other point of evaluation is the quizzes, the verbal quizzes, whether you have understood the concept is clear or not. And the third one will be finally end-sem examination, which will be a take-home examination. So I'll prepare, a few sets of questions for a group of students, and you will brainstorm about the problems, and then you will submit a solution. So since you do not have any questions, so let me go ahead with my lecture today. So today and tomorrow will be the wrap-up parts of chapter 3 and 4. So by tomorrow, you will see that we have more or less completed the first 4 chapters of heat transfer. I think about 10 lectures and two tutorials will be covering about first 4 chapters. And after this, maybe if I get hold of the software. So today and tomorrow's lecture also composes of some numerical parts. So we'll try to make sure that some hands-on demonstration is given to you. Some hands-on training will be given to you. I'll show from the slides that maybe using a CFD software, I'll try to show you that how these heat conductions are done numerically these days. I mean, of course, we are looking from the equation development, modeling, boundary condition perspectives, but how these things are done these days using numerically, which will be a part of today's and tomorrow's lectures. And then from there, we'll see how is it done using a software. So if I can get hold of the software, I'll try to implement in my computer, and then I'll show you how is it to be done. So that we will do. That will be something very interesting to you. I know many of you have a lot of interest in terms of computational fluid dynamics. Now, computational fluid dynamics not only applies to fluid dynamics, but it also applies to the heat transfer. So it's a combined subject. So computational heat transfer, how is it done? How temperature equations are solved numerically? So we'll show you a demonstration. I can see Pranshu has written one part that so question will be asked from the slides only. Questions from tutorials can also be asked in the verbal quiz, or questions from tutorials can also be asked. This is a very good question. This point I missed. Thank you. Yeah, I may put up the one tutorial also in front of you. Thank you for reminding me, Pranshu. So tutorial 1 and tutorial 2, I may just flash one tutorial and one problem of the tutorial, and I may ask you to make me understand what is there in the tutorial, how to solve the problem. Yes, that is another part. I was just forgetting this part. Thank you, Pranshu, for reminding this. So the tutorial, both the tutorials, you are having about 20-25 problems. You have to go through each and every problem. For you, I will choose randomly. You cannot choose the problem. I will choose the problem. If you are unable to solve the problem, that means it is 0. Okay, if you are able to solve the problem, I mean, generally, I'm a very lenient marker. If I can see that the effort is there, even if you make mistakes, I will try to give you 10 out of 10. Right? But then if I see the effort is not there, if I see that you are not listening to these lectures, okay, I understand a lot of difficulties are there in your home, internet, this, that. But as I understand, a lot of people are putting a lot of effort in order to do these courses. So suppose you can understand the difficulty with myself, preparing lectures and then going online, changing everything, and then presenting in front of you without Blackboard and all. A lot of preparations are necessary. So like that, you are also struggling. I understand that. So if I get a little hint that you are trying and you have understood the concepts, I'm going to give a lot of marks to you. But if I see that the effort is not there, if I see there is a chance, I mean, tendency of not listening to the lectures and all, if those types of hints I get from the quiz, I am very severe in that. Okay. So yes, that is one point that you have to keep in mind. Yes, so I think Pranshu, I have clarified your point, correct? Thank you for reminding me. I forgot that point. Actually, I was thinking so much on the slides, I forgot that point. Great. So let us start today's lecture. Let me recap the part, because this is a very tricky part of heat transfer. This is the way most of the heat transfer modeling started. You understand that if I'm really looking for an engineering problem, what I need to do, I need to first visualize the problem. Then I have to mold it towards a mathematical model. Then I have to solve that mathematical model, okay, in the forms of equations and unknowns. And then when I'm able to establish the unknowns, what I will do, I will apply that knowledge for the engineering calculations. Okay. So say suppose you have what is this problem? You have a slab, and this is a kind of 2D conduction slab. What is that? Say suppose there is a heat transfer taking place through this slab. Okay, what is the condition that we have applied? This is the width of the slab, this is the height of the slab. The temperature here is T1, the temperature here is T1, the temperature here is T1. But here the temperature is a function of X. This type of system happens for many situations. Like, say, suppose you have a microprocessor here, where some calculation, when the computer is turned off, this temperature of the microprocessor is at room temperature. But then when it is doing some calculation, when it is doing a very simple calculation, the temperature is, say, a little less. When it is doing a very heavy calculation, maybe temperature is exponentially going up. So I say that the temperature is a function of something like this, okay, at this place, which is a function of function of which is a function of what? Which is a function of x in this direction. Okay. So if I really set up a problem like this, which is an engineering problem, what I need to do, I need to first look at the steady state heat conduction equation, and then I have to find out the boundary conditions associated with that, which I have just now defined. Now this defines a problem which is a complete problem. How? You can see that this is a second order in x direction, this is second order in y direction, and then second order is y direction, means in y direction you require two boundary conditions, y direction you require two boundary conditions, second order in x direction means x direction you require two boundary conditions. So you actually require four boundary conditions. So if you specify four boundary conditions to this second two-dimensional elliptic equation, this problem statement is complete. This problem statements, if I look at this part, the problem statement becomes complete. Now, once the problem statement become complete, then what I need to get? I need to get the solution for T. How does T looks like? So there, what I do, I apply a simple. I can go numerically by solving this, which we'll see later, later or tomorrow, tomorrow's lecture. But first attempt should be like to solve it analytically. This is the way people generally go. That if I have an analytical solution, then what will happen? Then I can really make an attempt, to do the calculations on my table itself. But then if I solve numerically, I may need a software or I need to write a code, right? So what generally people do that, okay, since there is an x directional variable, since there is a y directional variable, I put the method called separation of variable, while x is a function of x and y is a function of y, which is not the case always. It's a very important simplification step that we are proposing here in order to get an analytical solution. Why am I doing this? Because if I don't do that, then what happens? Then I am unable to solve this problem at this stage. So what we are assuming that the variation in x direction of the temperature and variation in y direction as temperature is relatively decoupled. They are not coupled to each other. Okay. So x is not a function of x and y is not a function of x and y. So if we do this way, and if we put this assumption into this, then what happens? I convert this partial differential equation into a set of two ordinary differential equations, okay, which comes out to be this. This is one ordinary differential equation in x. This is an ordinary differential equation in y. Okay, now this requires two boundary conditions, this requires two boundary conditions, and based on the magnitude of lambda, I have three different solutions from the fundamentals of ODE. Okay, from the fundamentals of ODE, I can find out three different solutions, right? Now, say suppose if lambda equal to 0, you can see there is a straightaway linear solution. And if lambda is finite, say less than 0 or greater than 0, you have a set of solution. Like less than 0, it looks like this, and for greater than 0, it looks like this. Now, what will be the job? To identify the constants. How do I identify the constants? I enforce these temperature boundary conditions and identify these constants. Okay. Now, while doing that, we realize that enforcing temperature boundary condition. If I enforce a temperature boundary condition, I have to carry a lot of parameters. But if we define a parameter which is theta, which is the temperature difference, this is the temperature anywhere, and this is the temperature surrounding. So define theta. So you can see that T equal to T1, T equal to T1, T equal to T1. That becomes theta equal to 0 and y equal to 0. If we can enforce this sort of boundary condition, what happens? You understand that while doing the ODEs and PDEs, the constant becomes 0. So this is the first trick that we started with. Rather than going for the temperature solution, we will go for what? We will go for the driving force. So that if the driving force is 0, at y equal to 0, the driving force is 0. Okay, at y equal to h, there is a driving force. So in that manner, if I enforce it, what happens? I'm able to write the solution. I'm able to write the solution in terms of theta. Okay, there are some slides where you can see that we can write the solutions in terms of theta. I'm coming to there. So you can really define this problem in terms of theta. Say, suppose if I replace this theta equal to t minus t1 to here, okay, so what will happen? T will become theta plus t1. If I put theta plus t1, if I put theta plus t1, you can see that this will become del square theta by del x square, del square theta by del y square equal to 0. And then you have this set of boundary conditions. You can force the separation of variable likewise, where you will see in this framework with this elliptical equation with respect to theta, what happens? You will be able to really get the theta in terms of eliminating these constants will become very easy, and you will get the solutions for theta, and from there you get t. Now, what is the advantage of getting t from this framework? You know that qy is del t by del y. If I know theta, I know t, I will be able to evaluate this. K I know, a I already know. And del t by del x, if I look how the temperature change here, if I look how the temperature change here, if I look how the temperature change here, you know that if I have the entire temperature profile, what you are getting from this, what you are getting from this, and what you are getting from this, you will be able to really evaluate del t by del x and del t by del y. Moment you get that, you know qx and qy, and if you do a vector addition, you get the q. So the rate of heat transfer through an object, so suppose this is a two-dimensional object, you are really able to evaluate just by forcing this model. From where did we start? We started with what? We started with the Reynolds transfer theorem. There what we did the energy balance. Okay, from the energy balance, what we did, we find out that when temperature diffuses, when the heat diffuses, when energy diffuses, it follows a law which is called the Fourier law of heat conduction. From where this particular conduction law is happening, this is a phenomenological law, right? This is like in Newton's second law of motion, Newton's laws of motion. This is a phenomenological law. This is from somewhere. I have done 10 experiments. I have done 200 experiments. From there, I have understood that if there is a high temperature, if there is a low temperature, if there is a solid medium in the middle, temperature, energy is going to translate from what? High temperature place to the low temperature place. And if this is happening in a diffusive manner, we know that there can be three possibilities. It can be a convection, conduction, and radiation. So diffusion means it is a conduction. So if it is conducting from higher temperature to the lower temperature, okay, it follows the Fourier law of heat conduction, right? Now, when I enforce this Fourier law of conduction into the energy balance equation, and then I assume that the system is in steady state and 2D, I end up getting this equation for this equation. Boundary conditions that are associated with this particular situation, and then I try to get an analytical solution with certain assumptions. This is the entire framework of heat transfer that we are operating with. Okay. Now, this is for a steady 2D conduction, right? Now you can see that, these steps we have already discussed. Now, this is the way you evaluate the constants and all I have given. Just go through this. These are all simple algebra that has been done to evaluate all the different types of constants. And I have already described about this. Now, the second problem that we take, that's suppose if you have a slab like this, okay, but this particular slab is losing or gaining temperature with respect to time, right? It is losing or gaining temperature with respect to time. Say suppose I have heated this wall, okay, or suppose I have heated this wall, okay, or suppose there is a reaction that is happening inside this, okay, some sort of heat is being conducted through this particular medium, okay. Now, and that is not a steady situation. That is not a steady situation. So what do you expect? Then the transient term will come, right? So the conduction that is taking place through this, it has a variation with respect to time, and I end up getting a parabolic equation like this. And as we have defined that theta can be t minus t1, okay, which is the driving force. If I put it into this equation, I get this in terms of theta. So what is theta equal to theta I? The temperature in the beginning, the time t equal to 0, time t equal to 0 from x equal to 0 to 2L, x equal to 0 to 2L. What is the dimension of this equation? This is a one-dimensional in space and two-dimensional in time. What is the order of this equation? This is a second order in space and first order in time, partial derivative. Whether it's a linear differential or non-linear, it's a linear differential equation. What type of equation is this? This is a parabolic equation. So this thing should be very much straightforward to you, and then you should be able to interpret how to solve the problem. So this is the initial condition. Now what is the boundary condition? Initial condition means you know that 1 by alpha delta t by delta tau. So how many conditions I need in order to solve this differential? I need one condition, and since this is with respect to time, that's why I call this to be the initial condition, tau t equal to 0. Now I have second order in space, then how many boundary conditions I will require? Theta equal to 0, theta equal to 0 at x equal to 0 and x equal to 2. So when time tau is greater than 0, as the time, time t equal to 0, the process is starting. When tau is greater than 0, what am I enforcing? That at x equal to 0, that means at this place theta equal to 0, that means t equal to t1, and at x equal to 2l, what is that? Theta equal to 0, that means t equal to t1. So here is also it is t1, here is also it is t1. So this is a finite one-dimensional plate, and how the temperature is changing across this. Okay, if there is an initial temperature, suppose I have heated up, say one can really see this problem, a very simple problem. How? Say suppose I take this. This is this slab, right? So initially, what I do, I put this into fire. So this heats up. So I heat it up for say suppose 10 seconds, right? Now I put time t to 0. After heating up, this is a slab at some temperature. Say suppose 350 degrees centigrade. Now I want to know how this particular slab is temperature, losing the heat, losing the energy with respect to time. That's the problem that we are setting here. So for that, I need to do a transient equation. I need to give a transformation with respect to theta. Then I have to set up an initial condition. This Ti is my 350 degrees centigrade, and these two are the boundary conditions at this place and at this place. It is at ambient temperature. Now this is the way I have defined the problem statement. Once the problem statement is ready, what I do now, I have to solve the problem. I know that the initial condition required for this, I have defined it clearly. Two boundary conditions are required, I have defined it clearly. So this is the equation, these are the set of boundary conditions. Then you know that this is a parabolic equation, and you will not straight away, since there are two dimensions, one is time and one is space. It is one dimensional in space, but space time it is in two dimensions. So you will not be able to solve it so easily. So what you do, you again propose a separation of variable, decoupling the space and the time. Moment you do that, moment you enforce in this equation, you end up getting two equations, which is second order in space, two ordinary differential equations. One is second order in space and the other is first order in time. And then if you go for the solution of theta, you end up getting a very, very interesting solution. You solve this one, you solve this one to get this part, and you solve, previously we have seen the solution of this is something like this. So you multiply these two in order to get theta equal to this. Now C1, C2 you evaluate from this place, and lambda you evaluate from where? Lambda you evaluate from here. So this becomes a very straightforward model. This number scribbling and all has to be done by you in order to make sure that you understand. So you can see that the entire process has been done, and then you can see that theta y theta I. Okay, this becomes something like this, which is a kind of a power series, a Fourier series solution you get. Okay, this is a typical Fourier series solution that you get for theta by theta I. Theta by theta I means T minus T1 by Ti minus T1. Ti is the initial temperature, Ti is the initial temperature, T1 is the ambient temperature. So T minus T1 by Ti minus T1. I just like to spend a few more minutes here to show you a few parameters here. What is the first parameter? Say theta, we say that this is the driving force. Now what is theta by theta I? You can see that theta by theta I is the emergence of a dimensionless temperature. Okay, what is the unit of T? Unit of T is a Kelvin. What is the unit of T minus T1? It is the unit is Kelvin. What is the unit of theta? It is the unit of Kelvin, right? But then if I divide theta by theta I, where theta I is Ti minus T1, where T1 and Ti both are in Kelvin, theta I is also in Kelvin. So theta by theta I becomes a dimensionless number. This is called the dimensionless temperature. Okay, or non-dimensional temperature. This is the terminology that has been used. So the purpose of writing these equations in terms of theta is not only to write that equation or simplify the calculations of the boundary condition, but more importantly to cook up a parameter temperature, which is the dimensionless or non-dimensional temperature. This will help us a lot as we go, because you can see that if you look at temperature, you are looking here. If you look at T1, you are looking here. If you look at Ti, that is the temperature in the beginning. But if you look at theta by theta I, you are able to really get the entire picture of temperature change in the body from the beginning to the boundaries and what is the present temperature. So theta by theta I has so many parameters embedded into it, and this is the way we generally define the dimensionless parameter. You are reading Reynolds number, right, in fluid mechanics. We have already read about the thermal diffusivity, right? We have already talked about the BO number, right? These are all dimensionless number. From where do they appear? I'm going to take a class on this dimensional analysis, which you will do also, this Buckingham pi theorem in fluid mechanics. There I will show that in engineering systems, we don't take every parameter separately. We don't take density, we don't take heat capacity, we don't take heat transfer coefficient, we don't take thermal conductivities separately. But then we try and combine them together, okay, in order to see, a composite parameter. If we vary that composite parameter, that gives a much better and clearer picture than with a single parameter. Like, what is the physical significance of this parameter? This was the driving force in the beginning, right? Now, what is the physical significance of this parameter? So this is time t equal to 0. What is the physical significance of this parameter? This is time t equal to t. So moment you look at the magnitude of this, suppose this is a fraction, that means the temperature is reducing. Suppose this is 10,000, that means the temperature is increasing with respect to time. So initial temperature, if you look at theta by theta I to be 10,000, that means the present temperature is much larger than the initial temperature. Present temperature difference is much larger than the initial temperature difference. This information you will not get just looking at only T, because if you look at T, you do not know what is Ti. You do not know what is T1. Okay, if this particular parameter is negative, that means outside temperature is always larger than the inside temperature. There is a possibility, right? So the sign and magnitude of theta by theta I talks about the entire system. Whereas if you follow T only, you have to look for the boundary temperature, you have to look for the initial temperature, which is not generally embedded. So theta by theta I is a dimensionless temperature or non-dimensional temperature, which gives you the picture of the entire system. Number one. Number two, I look at another parameter, which is called n pi by 2L square alpha tau. Okay. What is the unit of tau here? What is the unit of tau here? You know that unit of tau is second. What is alpha? Alpha is the thermal diffusivity, just like kinematic viscosity, just like mass diffusivity. What is the unit of alpha? We have studied that unit of alpha is meter square per second. Correct? So meter square per second, alpha is meter square per second, tau is second. So alpha tau gives me a unit of meter square. Now, what is n pi by 2L square? L is the dimension and L square. So you can see that exponential on top of exponential, whatever is there, this is always unitless. So alpha tau by 4L square. Okay, or alpha tau by L square. If I just summarize this alpha tau by L square, alpha tau by L square. Here also, if I summarize alpha tau by L square, this is also a dimensionless parameter. This is also a dimensionless parameter. So just if I leave this n pi by 2, which is the consequence of a series on how many terms I am taking. If I take one term, this will be only a single term. If I take many terms, this will be a series. If I just leave apart this part, this particular components also, this particular alpha tau by L square talks about what? Talks about a dimensionless parameter. Now what is L? L you define as what is alpha? Alpha is the thermal diffusivity. Okay, we have defined K by rho Cp. That means how much is conducted and how much is held. Okay, and what is L? L is the characteristic dimension of the material. Here, what is 2L? 2L is the length. Okay, from there the L is coming, right? So L is a signature of the thickness of the plate, finiteness of the plate, right? Now, if you divide alpha tau by L square, that gives you a dimensionless parameter, and we are going to discuss about it more as we progress. So you can see that we are trying to define the temperature profile in terms of a few dimensionless numbers, and then later on we'll try to plot in different situations to see the consequence of that. Great. Now we define this problem we did during the tutorial, that say suppose I have taken an arbitrary material and I know that this is a metal. So suppose I have heated it up at a very high temperature, right? So this picture I could not draw that day. I'm just planning to draw now, because this is a very important concept that you need to remember here, that say suppose so my PowerPoint slide is visible to everybody. Am I correct?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Say suppose you have a ball which is like this, and this is a metal ball. Okay, and say suppose I have immersed this metal ball into what? Say suppose I have immersed this metal ball into water. So this is my water. Okay, and this metal ball has what? This metal ball has a very high temperature. Okay, say this is at suppose 350. Okay, 350 centigrade, 350 degrees centigrade. So when I immerse the metal ball into water, is that how fast I am able to lose the heat. And say suppose this is air, this part is air. Okay, so you in a air water interface, the metal ball, this may not float. Okay, this may. Okay, so let us take a better situation that this is not air. A more practical system that this particular thing is immersed inside water. So this is my typical system. So people expect that, say suppose if I focus if I focus in this part of the metallic object, what is happening here? Since this is metal and since this has a very high thermal conductivity, I expect the temperature of the entire body will be at 350 degrees centigrade, which may not be the case that if it is an insulator. Okay, so now for a metal, if I just draw the surfaces like this, in this situation, in the water side, what I may see thin boundary layer that is developing. Why? Because since the near the wall, the temperature is high. Okay, the density of the water will be low. So this will be near 350, and this is room temperature, very high. So this highly dense fluid will come towards this, and low density fluid will go towards away, and there will be recirculation starting, which will be the result of this boundary layer. Whereas since this is at a very high temperature, it will always, and since this is at a very low temperature, say suppose the temperature of this is say 25 degrees centigrade. Okay, so this is at 25 degrees centigrade, it is a room temperature. Now what will happen because of this temperature gradient? Since this is a metal and since the thermal conductivity is high, the resistance in this boundary layer, resistance here in this boundary layer will be the highest. Okay, and one can really summarize the equation. One can really summarize the system to be whatever change is taking place in the body is because of the convective heat transfer that is taking place near the boundary. Now, if this is the situation, then I can quickly set up a heat convection equation. Convection is related to what? The transient change in the temperature with respect to time. So this is a first order with respect to time. So I have tau equal to 0, T equal to T0, which is 350 degrees centigrade. And if I quickly solve the problem, I end up getting a very simple equation. This is again in terms of theta. T minus T infinity. T is the temperature of this solid. T infinity is here. T0 is T is the present temperature and T0 is the initial temperature. So what I have shown here, 350 degrees centigrade is T0, 25 degrees T infinity, and as time progresses, with time this 350 will keep reducing. You know that if I immerse a hot solid into water, what will happen? The temperature will keep reducing. So that part has been taken care of. That part has been taken care of by this. This is a theta system, and then which is equal to, this is a dimensionless temperature or non-dimensional temperature, which will be equal to e to the power minus HA by rho CV. Okay, into tau. Now tau, we know that it is second, so the unit of this will be second inverse. HA by rho CV should have a unit of second inverse, right? Now what is the situation here? Situation here that, you know, if I really think about this particular situation, you have temperature, right? This particular temperature is trying to go from 350 degrees centigrade. Since this is a high energy element, and since this is a low energy element, energy is supposed to transfer from here to here. What is resisting? Resisting is this water boundary layer surrounding it. Why? Because this metal, you know, these conductors, they always want this energy to flow because there is a temperature difference. Whereas this water, which is typically an insulating material, you know, around a kind of metal ball, it is playing as an insulating material around a metal ball to make sure that, you know, the heat is not going. Say suppose this is entirely metal, you could have thought the heat would have propagated much faster. But then since there is water, in this situation, the heat is propagating at a much smaller rate. Why? Because first it is a liquid, second the thermal conductivity is low, and then there is a convective current that is going on, which is very poorly trying to dissipate this energy that is there in the metal to the water. So what sort of system I can interpret? I can interpret a system like this, that there is an electricity, like, you know, potential difference I have created due to T0 and T infinity, 25 degree and 350 degree. Okay, now moment I immerse it at time t equal to 0, I immerse it. What happens? You know, there is a capacity of this metal ball to hold the heat, which is related to the heat capacity of the system. So this metal has a capacity to hold the heat. Whereas this metal also has capacity to dissipate the heat through what? Through this temperature gradient and through this convective flow. So there are two simultaneous things are taking place. Through this loop, what is happening? Through this loop, the energy is getting dissipated, which is the loop of the resistance, and resistance we know 1 by HA. And through this loop, what is happening? The energy is being stored. You know, heat capacity of a material. Why water has such a high heat capacity? Because it can really keep the heat with itself. The molecular architecture is such that, you know, if you put energy into it, it is capable of, like, you know, retaining that energy, which is not in case of an alcohol. Okay, so you can see that straight away this HA by rho CV can be divided into two parts. This rho CV part is what? Is the capacitance. Okay, whereas 1 by HA is the part which is the resistance. So HA by rho CV can be interpreted as, you know, 1 by resistance to capacitance. Okay, where resistance is 1 by HA and capacitance is 1 by rho CV. Okay, and so this is a kind of very interesting heat transfer system, which is very much equivalent to a kind of, like, you know, electrical system or an electronic system, where, you know, the time constant, the character, you also get similar time constants in case of an electrical flow. the capacitance to the resistance. The ratio of these two gives you the time constant, the characteristic times. Capacity means how much electron I can hold. Resistance means, or conductance means how quickly I can dissipate the electron, right? So this is typically a kind of like, 1 by resistance means it's conductance by the capacitance. Okay. So conductance by the capacitance. So that ratio gives you what? That ratio gives you what? That ratio gives you the typical time. What is the physical significance of this time? The physical significance of this time is how quickly this energy is going to get dissipated. So this is what? This is resisting. This part is resisting. This part is resisting towards dissipation, whereas this part is facilitating towards the dissipation. And tau is what? Tau is equal to C rho V by HA. Okay, which is the opposite of which is. See, this is time, which is second. HA by rho CV should be second inverse. So tau will be C rho V divided by HA. Now let us look into this. What is rho CV? Rho is mass per unit volume. C is the capacitance, and this is volume. So mass into capacitance per unit mass. So this is essentially the capacitance of this object. And let us look at what is resistance. We have looked into this HA parameter a lot. This is nothing but K by delta A. So K by delta A is what? K by delta A is associated with delta is the boundary layer thickness, the thickness of this boundary layer. And then you have what? And then you have H is equal to K by delta into A. A is the what? A is the area. Through this area, through this surface, this energy is getting dissipated through these convection currents. There is a time associated with that. Some amount of heat that is coming because of the temperature gradient is getting dissipated through that. This particular time scale has been decided by tau. Okay, and from there we could give the concept of the Biot number, which says that we put up a dimensionless quantity, which is H V by A by K. Okay, this we define as the another dimensionless quantity, which is called the Biot number. What is this Biot number? H is the heat transfer coefficient. G by A is a very interesting parameter that is called the surface to volume ratio. Okay, this is a very, very interesting parameter in terms of what? In terms of everything. So suppose I think about a sphere, right? So what will be my V by A? If I think about a sphere, what will be my V by A? Say I know that 4 by 3 pi r cube is my V divided by what will be my area? 4 pi r square, right? So what will be my V by A? V by A will be equal to R by 3. This will be equal to my V by A for a sphere. So you can see that volume to area, okay, that is a function of R. Or if I just do the other way around, say A by V, say suppose surface to volume ratio, which is A by V, which is equal to what? Which is equivalent to, I can write that 3 by R. So that means if I reduce R, what is going to happen? This parameter is going to what? This parameter is going to increase significantly. When you take coal and when you try to create thermal power, what you do? You first take the coal and then you pulverize. When you take big chunks of coal, when you take briquette, when you try to cook up a chula, what you do? You try to break the briquettes or break the coal bigger particles into smaller one before you make the chula. Why don't you burn the big particle? Because it has a very area to volume ratio. This is called the surface to volume ratio. Bigger particles will always have less surface to volume ratio. It's actually like decided by this. Smaller particles, as you keep reducing it per unit volume, it will have more surface, which is called the inverse of the characteristic length, and V by A is called the characteristic length for any geometry. What does it mean? That how much volume do you have per unit surface area? More surface area means more convective heat transfer. More volume means more heat capacity. Now this gives you the ratio of these two, gives you the characteristic length. Now if you multiply this characteristic length with H, this gives you the extent of convective heat transfer by the transient mean through the boundary. Whereas K gives you the what is the amount of conduction that is happening inside the system. And then if you decide this to be less than 0.1, that is a typically a lumped capacity type, which we have done a lot of problems in the tutorial. Great. Let us move on. Let us move on with this. So we have now understood three different types of dimensionless quantities. One is the dimensionless temperature. Then we have the dimensionless time and dimensionless length, alpha tau by L square. This can be dimensionless time. This can also be used as dimensional length, dimensionless length. As we progress, you will see. So you can make use of these things for, say, suppose transient flow in a semi-infinite solid. What is the equation? Let us look at bluntly. You know, this del square T by del X square 1 by alpha del T by del tau. Temperature is T1. Here temperature, it can be T0, or temperature can be a heat flux boundary condition. Right? In that, what we do, we now enforce these two boundary conditions. T at X and 0. 0 means time. At X, at any point X and 0, it is Ti. So initial temperature is Ti, and T at 0 and tau, at this place 0 and tau. So I have just changed the boundary condition, and you can see the solution has changed. Now when I look at this solution, what I do, I do a plot. I just demagnify it a little bit because the x-axis is not visible. Now you can see that when I go for a plot, I go for a plot of a dimensionless temperature, and then what I go for this parameter. What is alpha tau? Meter square per second. What is tau? Second. So this is meter square. Root over of meter square is meter. Meter by meter. So you can see that x by 2 root alpha tau gives me a dimensionless length. Okay. This gives me a dimensionless length. If I think about tau, this also gives me a dimensionless tau. How? This tau alpha 4 tau alpha by x square gives me the dimensionless time. So if I look at this, these are the dimensionless length. So as I progress from here to here, what is going to happen? The driving force is going to what? The driving force is going to reduce. So what does it mean? That as here you have a huge temperature. Here in this situation, T0, you know, T is equal to Ti. In this situation, T is equal to Ti at x equal to 0. But as I progress from here to here, so what happens? You know, this T, what does happen to T? The T increases, okay, then Ti, and then what is happening? You know, this is becoming increasing and increasing, and finally it is becoming 1. Or the other way around, in order to make it, say if I look at Tx tau. So suppose x tau I make to be 0. Tau to be 0. So if tau is 0, what happens? This particular thing goes to what? This is goes to infinity. So you can see that if tau is equal to 0, this part goes to infinity. So in that infinity part, what is the temperature that you are attaining? You can see that temperature is 1. That means T is equal to, okay. So tau is equal to infinity. If you just leave this particular system for a very, very long duration, you are going to get what? You are going to. So when you are plotting the temperature gradient, the dimensionless temperature with respect to the length, the dimensionless length, you are getting a composite plot which are embedded with the information of initial temperature, which is embedded with the temperature which is near the boundary, which is embedded with the thermal diffusivity of the system, which is also embedded with the time associated with the system. So you can see that so many different, you could have plotted T versus X. You know, after solving this, you could have plotted T versus X. So that would not have given you this many set of parameters which we could obtain from this particular plot. Okay, so let us see the other types of plots from the same solution. If you change the boundary condition of the previous equation into this, okay, you end up getting a solution. You need not really calculate these things because these are all standard solutions. Okay, in terms of error function, you just need to remember for which condition what happens. So you can see that for different time, you know how exactly this dimensionless temperature changes with x square by 4 alpha tau. I was just mentioning that if you just square this particular variable, you are going to get x square by 4 alpha tau. And here you may see that this is expressed now. This is not expressed in terms of only temperature, but this is expressed in terms of heat flux by Q0. So this is total. In the top you have the heat flux. You know, here you have the bottom. So this is a dimensionless temperature, and this one is called as the dimensionless heat flux. So different ways of, like, you know, temperature mechanism, temperature heat transfer mechanisms are considered in the plots in the form of the plots where you have every information embedded. T is the present temperature, Ti is the initial temperature, A is the cross-sectional area, rho is the density, C is the capacity. Okay, alpha is the thermal diffusivity, Q0 is the initial condition associated with the heat. Okay, joule per meter square, instantaneous surface pulse, Q0 by A is the instantaneous surface pulse, x square is the length at which it is happening, alpha is the thermal diffusivity, and tau is after what time. So this is a very composite piece of information, a very compact piece of information, you know, holding all the information associated with a system, you know, which is undergoing a change in temperature with respect to what? With respect to a heat flux condition or with respect to a constant temperature condition. So this is a constant temperature condition situation. And then if you enforce a heat flux condition, you are going to get that, and you can express the entire thing in the form of temperature equations like this. Okay, now you can also change the boundary condition here. What you did, you put the heat flux Q0 equal to heat flux condition. That also you can put as a kind of, like, you know, this heat flux is equivalent to what? There is a boundary layer at this place, and that boundary layer is taking, you know, this is getting dissipated with this boundary layer in terms of convection. You just change the boundary condition there like that. So you end up getting a complicated equation like this. This has been derived long back. Okay. And this has been there in the literature for a while. And these days, today, we don't solve these problems like this. Okay, so these are the case studies which actually gives us the basis for the way we do numerical analysis today, right? And these are the validation cases which are obtained in using different analytical methods. So you can see straight away 3 solutions. One solution is like this. The other solution is, if I change the boundary condition a little bit, it is like this. Again, I change the boundary condition, it will give me a solution. It will give me a solution like this. And that again I can embed. You can see here again dimensionless temperature by x by 4 alpha tau to the power half. This is another way of representing the dimensionless length. So as the length changes, how the dimensionless temperature changes. Now you can see that you have given different types of h into alpha tau to the power half by k. This is what? This is again, you can understand that this is again what? This is again something like the O number. Okay, alpha is meter square per second. You know, tau is second. So this is meter square to the power half. This is a signature of what? This is a signature of the V by A. And you can really write this theta by theta 0 in this manner in order to convert this equation to write in the form of something like, to plot in the form of something like this. Okay, about these Heisler charts a little bit more, just to give you the hint that what we are expecting here, we are expecting to plot the dimensionless temperature with respect to the time or length scale. Okay, now this is defined by the Fourier number, okay, which compares the characteristic body dimension with an approximate temperature wave penetration depth at a time tau. So how Fourier number is defined, just to conclude this lecture, how Fourier number is defined: alpha tau by s square. What is s? S is equal to V by A. What is alpha? Thermal diffusivity, meter square per second, meter square divided by meter square. What does it say? That for a given time, how much temperature wave have penetrated into the system, okay, against what is the dimension? How much temperature wave penetrated into the system against what is the characteristic dimension. This is defined by the Fourier number. And what is Biot number? Biot number tells us that how much is conducted and how much is convected with respect to the surface to volume ratio for a given time. Because you can understand this S also, as I have showed, this S also can be written as, this S can also be written as, this S can also be written as alpha tau, right? Root over of alpha tau. This S can also be written as root over of alpha tau. So later on, as you will see, when we will introduce the Nusselt number, so there you will find that, you know, this will become the characteristic dimension, which will give you the extent of convection to the extent of conduction. Please don't confuse between Biot number and Nusselt number. They look very similar. Biot number has to do with the say, suppose if you have a geometry, how quickly it is losing heat in a transient case, than how exactly it is retaining it. What is the modes of conduction and convection in a very short time? That is the physical significance of the Biot number. Whereas Nusselt number gives you that, say, for a heat transfer process, how much is convected and how much is conducted, right? So that will come later. But then, you know, for the time being, you have to fix the matter associated with Biot and Fourier number, which we are going to discuss a little bit more in the next class before going for the numerical part. Okay, so if you have any question, you can ask. Do you have any question?
Sir?
Yeah.
I had a question, but not related to the chapters you have teach today.
Please ask, please ask.
Sir, we have 5 postulates and 4 rules in thermodynamics. So why they coincide?
Yes, because they, you have to understand, they have emerged as, like, you know, over a kind of 150 years. You know, these postulates, initially people thought that they were all independent, but as the subject progressed, people found out that many of the postulates were similar to the laws. Okay, so then it was coincided with them. So rather than 9, you know, they become like, you know, 4 law and 5 postulates with certain intersection points in between. And postulates are like hypotheses. See, whenever you develop a law, you put forward a hypothesis first, and then you come up with, like, you know, a lot of experimental or theoretical evidences to establish the law, right? Like, say, suppose you saw Kepler's law, right? And then you came to the Newton's law of motion, right? So many of the Kepler's laws were applicable to, I mean, they were found out later on, it's Newton's law, but today you call them Newton's law. Now, if I ask you the question, what are the Kepler's laws and what are the Newton's laws, you will find there is an interaction between them, because both are applicable, both are basically, right now you call it as Newtonian mechanics, but then they are all, like, you know, in the Cartesian system, they are all same. I mean, you tell them Newtonian, but then Newton law actually justifies those laws, correct? So it is to do with the history of the subject rather than only. I mean, if it were possible, one should have made it exclusive, but that's the way the subject has developed. Like, say, suppose if you have a positive electrode and a negative electrode, right? There's a cathode and anode. You always say that the current flows from anode to cathode, whereas the electrons are flowing from, I mean, cathode to anode, right? So it should be electricity should have flown in the direction of the electron flow, but the way you have defined is the other way around. So it's something like that. Okay. Any other question?
Sir, tutorial to question 2. We have known that rho and Cp was given. And alpha and K was also given. Sir, but we have used the formula alpha is equals to K by rho C to find rho C. And the value was different from the multiplication of rho and C. Why is this, sir?
Where is that?
Yes, in tutorial 2 question 2. Yes, sir, this one.
Yeah.
Rho and CP was given. But we have used the formula alpha is equals to K by rho C.
Alpha is equal to K by rho CP, no? That is the case,
yes, sir.
No? What is the problem?
But we have given rho and CP. Why we have not multiplied directly rho and CP?
You can do that. I mean, these are all. I mean, see, the way I do, you may do different way. Ultimately, whether you get the right answer or not, just the way you want.
Okay, sir.
Okay, don't be very strict and stringent to your approach. Engineering is a place where you have to be very flexible, very flexible. Okay. Anything else?
No, sir.
You should have your own way, and I don't think if you do it right way, a credit will be given. Don't worry about that. No, I'm not strict in terms of the way I'm teaching you how to do this way. You should actually try to do something else. Solutions are given, to give you the hint that this is the way it can be done. This is one of the solutions. If you can find out your way, that is absolutely like, I'll be the happiest person on the globe. Okay. Anything else? Any other question? I can see one comment is there, sir. We have to write equation and present on the screen, or we have to do it verbally? This is Priyanshu, right? This is related to quiz you are asking. I will try to be tell me the concept verbally to me, because I don't believe in too much in writing and all. If you have understood the whole thing, the purpose is solved. If you have learned heat transfer, the purpose is solved. It is not about whether you are able to see. All of you are good in equations, unknowns, boundary conditions. That is accepted. That's why you have cracked JEE. So none of us are testing you on that anymore. Question is that whether you have understood the concept as the engineering concept of heat transfer or not, or whether you have done it by yourself or not. That is the check that we are making here. Okay, so purpose of the quiz will be to check only that whether you have gone through the lecture notes, whether you are following the lecture notes or not. Ideally, if you give me the liberty, I'll even not do that. I don't like taking exams and all. But some people take liberty of that. They just don't learn anything. They just don't pay attention to anything. Whatever you tell, they don't pay attention to anything until or unless they will be put into an examination. And that is the reason why I have to do this painful thing. I also have weekend and all, right? Everybody is enjoying. I should also enjoy the weekend. The TS should also enjoy the weekend. But why should I first distrust you and then, hold a quiz, asking whether you have done this, that or not? But if I do that, I know that 25% of the students, they will not do anything absolutely. And that has become the culture of the whole system. And that's the problem. I just want to teach. I wish that, you enjoy the lectures and listen there, do yourself studies and all. That is the whole spirit of academy. It is not happening. That's why these checks are created by the administration. And then you have to bear with that. Okay, my only idea of quiz will be whether you understand thermal conductivity, whether you understand thermal diffusivity, whether you understand heat transfer coefficient, what is convection, what is radiation, what is conduction, what is Fourier's law, what is Newton's law of cooling, what is boundary layer. Okay, whatever I have taught in the class, I'll be bombarding these questions to you, from all the lectures that are there. And then you have to quick fire, you have to give me the answers to that. Through all the lectures, if you have read all the PowerPoints, I think all of you, those who have done this, tutorials, I have seen some of you are doing very seriously. I know you will get 10 out of 10. And I'm extremely lenient marker, I'm telling you. Moment I get the hint that you are doing it, I'm going to give you 10 out of 10. But if I get a hint that you are not into it, then you will be in trouble, I'm telling you. Okay, so please make preparation. Make sure that these 4 chapters are over for your entire BTech curriculum. It is there in your head. Anytime when you pick up and you can prepare. You can tell in your this placement interviews, my favorite subject is heat transfer. And whatever will be asked in first 6 chapters. If you are through with first 6 chapters and whatever I have summarized in the lectures, it is nothing more than that, nothing less than that. It's all common sense. You don't even need to prepare. If you sit down for 2 hours, you will be through with everything if you are just doing the course and all the lectures. And placement, 50% part is done. Personal management and all is there. Technically, they will